Hello guys and girls, welcome back to the channel. If you've been here before, if you're new to the channel, really appreciate your visit and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to ask you to obviously subscribe and comment down there and keep the algorithm happy. I'm trying to get monetized, so every single subscriber helps. Today we're going to be talking about the Supafly Juicemode, which is a new quad come out from the superflyfpv.com. So Stephen in the UK has been developing this quad for quite some time, and it is now the time for it to reach the light of day. As you know, I'm a very big fan of Supafly. I have all of their frames. I've got the Supafly, this is the V2, here is the V1, which is being repaired. I'm going to be rebuilt because I broke a little arm. And here's the Supafly V3, which is under construction. So I'm going to make some changes to this one today. And I'm also going to show you how the Supafly frames hold up to some serious carnage. So let's go straight ahead into a little quick overview of the brand new Juicemode. It is a 220 style frame, squished X, uses the same geometry as the Chameleon, the Wizard, the Supafly flip mode, as in if you stack them on top of each other, basically all the motors they correspond to the same place, so all the motor holes, you know. I've got a Chameleon back there. I'm not going to get it because it's exactly the same geometry. So as you can see, they all just, you know, the base layout of the frame, the geometry of the frame, the centers of gravity and all that jazz are all very similar. They're identical in the flip modes, of course, independent of which version. So that's not a problem. Yeah, what can I say? It's a really easy frame to put together. Uses the same construction method as all of the other Supafly frames so far. So you've got a bottom plate which squishes the arms to the big bottom plate here. So that's a 3-plate bottom end, which is quite rigid. The arms butt together in the center, which is really good, because they just become like one solid piece. This is really great. This also helps to isolate some of the vibrations from the motors rather than just the solid plate, the solid, you know, arms, single arms, induce a little bit more vibrations. As you can see, it comes with these very nice skins. There are quite a few designs of these skins available for purchase. They're an additional extra to the actual frame. I designed and 3D printed these ESC protectors because I used 4 ESCs on this one, independent ESCs on this build. It is also rocking the Supafly motors, which are BrotherHobby R5 returners. They are 2306, 2450 kVs. There are also 2650 kV versions of these, but I'm not sure if there are any more available brand new. So you need to speak to Supafly to see if they can get you some. So this uses a 8 standoff design between the bottom and the top plate. They are 30 millimeters long. They're knurled aluminum standoffs, and they come in a variety of colors. You just need to specify that when you order. I got this one with the titanium hardware, which is a little bit stronger, a little bit lighter than the steel hardware. Aluminum hardware is no longer an option. The only aluminum hardware on this build are the washers for the GoPro mount and the nuts for the arms. Other than that, everything on this one is titanium and steel. I opted to use 2.5 mil hex M2s there. They're just a little bit stronger and they don't strip out as much as the smaller steel ones. These titanium this titanium hardware here, they're very well made. They're nice and tight fit into your wrench, and the likelihood of them stripping off is low as long as you push your hex in there properly. It just basically gets stuck, and it's really good. What else can I say? It is very similar to the sort of alien concept, the QRVR, Sharpoo kind of wizard, whereas it uses a carbon fiber camera cage. The camera is quite well recessed in there. It does stick out a little bit out the front, this particular Foxeer camera, but if you use a micro camera like this Eachine one, I've made a little adapter for it, the Speedy B Eachine. You can see that will just fit in there quite nicely and not stick out at all. Well, maybe it does stick. No, it won't stick out. It's fine. That one will be protected. Yeah, 4mm arms, 2mm bottom plate, 2.5mm big plate, 2.5mm top plate, 2.5mm cage. Very strong, very robust. And I just love the way this thing goes together. I love the way it flies. It flies very juicy. It is inspired from the old juicy frames like from Johnny FPV and Wild Willie. Yeah, so it's a very refined frame, and well worth its money. This thing will cost you about between 50 and 75 pounds, UK pounds, depending on which options you choose, and depending on what you know. I paid about, what, 75 for this with the camera and all the titanium hardware, the camera cage titanium hardware. It's also got 3D printed antenna mounts. It is TPU, so it's really flexible. People comment on the length of my antenna. They say it will break, and yes, it will. If you fail a Matek flip, for example, the first thing to go is your antenna because you will fall backwards. I'm not too worried about breaking it. The reason why I use long antennas on pretty much all of my builds is very simple. When you have the battery on here and you are flying towards yourself, if you're using a short stubby antenna, your line of sight to that antenna from your goggles will be impeded by the battery and the camera, and you'll lose signal. So you will get interference, you might get some blackouts, etc. So I opt for a longer antenna, so I can stick it up like that, and that way it is pretty much always visible to my goggles to get great signal. Let me talk about my build a little bit. So this is running Matek. I'm running the Matek-Hub Vtx power distribution board with Vtx incorporated that connects with a ribbon cable to the Matek F405 STD. Yes, the one with the sensitive gyro. I have not had a problem with gyro issues on this board ever, and I've built about maybe 11. I've used maybe about 14 of these boards. I've had a couple that died on impact, but that's to be expected with sensitive electronics. I'm also running a 330 microfarad cap into the PDB. That's just to clean up the electrical signals a little bit, just to absorb the back current from the ESCs when you decelerate and punch accelerate stuff. And I am using on this one I'm using one of the new Nirvana FlySky 14 channel receivers. So as you can see, this is a pretty clean build. So it's a 2-board stack with an extra 3rd board for your receiver, and that's pretty much it. Sorry. I have yet to put in this one the camera control board, and I am also going to be putting in today, I'll be disassembling this so that you can see the innards. I'll be putting in this tiny Vifly buzzer. So it's like a self-powered buzzer that will start beeping if your battery ejects, so you can find your quad easier if you crash. Let's go ahead and, oh yes, and I'm using Spedix 25 amp BL Heli S ESCs on this one. All of this stack was transplanted from my Jep RC Leopard which I've just decided to cannibalize for parts to build this one, and I sold off the JEP-RC Leopard frame to someone who's starting out in the hobby and wanted to build a cheap rig. What should I say? In the box you get a very simple box with this. There's no flashy packaging. That's to keep the cost down, which is muchly appreciated. The packaging just gets thrown away anyway. Who needs a pretty package? Only Apple needs pretty packages. You get two straps. You get all the hardware, the frame. I got the skins as well, and that was all shipped in one day from superflyfpv.com. So a very satisfactory transaction with Steven, as always. So let's go ahead and clear out some of this stuff here and start disassembling this guy so that I can show you the inside and get this buzzer on here. What I like to do in the disassembly of these frames is I remove the standoffs from the bottom. There's a very good reason for that. Well, two reasons. One, it is much easier to strip out these countersunk screws. They have a very little purchase area for your driver, for your hex driver. They're very shallow, so they do strip out much easier than the button head screws. The second reason I do it from the bottom is because due to the countersink nature of these screws, you require a great deal more of torque to keep them in place. So they do come off easier. They with the vibrations, the micro vibrations in these quads, they just unscrew themselves. So I have Loctited these screws to avoid that happening. I've also Loctited the bottom, but I can just redo that Loctite and I don't have the risk of stripping out the screws. Another advantage of taking the standoffs from the bottom is you completely remove them from the frame. So you have much more space in here to do your resoldering and to just to work on the quad. It's much easier to work with the quad without the standoffs on there. Thus I remove them from the bottom, with exception from the rear ones, because I have my antennas zip tied to the rear standoffs and I have the antenna on there. So I will remove the top two in the back and all the others from the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. This is the boring stuff, which you've probably already seen before. What I'll do is I'll get this stuff out of the way. Get all this out of the way. And maybe bring this camera in a bit closer. So yeah, just killed that camera, but I'll reload it in a moment when it boots up. So let's get this screw off here. Yeah, the camera's rebooting. Yeah, you see these titanium screws, they're very, oh dear. Oh, that was hard to get off there. Very tight tolerance, which is great. I've also refined my driver. I've ground it down so that it's a little bit tighter on normal screws anyway. So there you go. Oh, the Loctite on these. Yeah, that one's not coming off. So how do we resolve the Loctite issue? As you can see, that one is stuck. To resolve the Loctite issue on that screw, I'm just going to quickly go over here and get a lipo. There it is. I have my trusty TS100 here. Yeah, my trusty TS100 with some crocodile clips on there. I'll just clip it in to my lipo. Got to be careful not to short circuit anything, so that's pretty safe. Just turn that on. I'm going to straight up to about 400 degrees on there. Clean that solder off. Takes a bit longer to warm up when you're on a lipo, and that lipo is not fully charged. There you go. So all you have to do, grab your solder, stick it in the screw, and wait. You pretty much any sort of glue, most of the adhesives in the world will deactivate somewhat with heat, except for Loctite Red. Loctite Red, you put that in and you'll never get it out again. It is permanent. I use Loctite Blue. It's Delta brand, from Delta Adhesives. Nut grade 77 Loctite Blue. I purchased this in Weston Supermare for £3.71 in the UK. Pretty good stuff. Smells exactly the same as the original Loctite and is half the price. So that should be it. Let's turn that off. Hopefully get this screw out properly. Yeah, I can feel the heat's gone all the way through, but it has come undone from the bottom. Let's try that again. There you go. Also, sometimes when you give it a quick shock, so you put pressure in and shock it quickly, it loosens the Loctite. There you go. That is great. I probably did put an excessive amount of Loctite on there anyway. Those two are out. Let's get these from the bottom. I hardly ever Loctite the bottom screws. I've lost a few sometimes, but generally I'm pretty brutal, so I tighten them pretty hard to avoid them coming out, and it generally helps. Not all the time, but 9 times out of 10 it will be fine. It's a bummer to lose your titanium hardware because it's not cheap to replace, and you can't just like order one screw. Nobody will just want to sell you one screw. Okay. And once I'm done with this, I will show you how the Supafly flip mode is holding up. That one has been through a little bit of hell lately because I got my chameleon stuck halfway up a cliff. And this particular place where we fly, this cliff, normally the Supafly is the main flyer. But in this particular place, I wanted to, I didn't want to destroy the Supafly because it was a bit wet and stuff. So I got the chameleon stuck up there, and then inevitably ended up using the Supafly a little bit more because it was stuck up there for a month. So I was going back to the quarry every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, for a month to see if I could find a climber who would normally hang out there. There's normally climbers climbing the cliff. So yeah, it took me a month to find a climber who could actually retrieve my chameleon from the top of the cliff. They did get it back for me. Unfortunately, my GoPro is lost up there somewhere, and they can't find it. So that was a bit of a bummer. So the Supafly has flown a lot lately, the flip mode. Rightio, so that's what it looks like when you remove the top with the standoffs. Very, very clean. As you can see, there's so much space in here, it's ridiculous. I'm obviously using the Matek rubber gummies standoffs. There's nothing really much more to say about how this is put together, other than it's really, really simple. So let us now go and see where my buzzer pads are. There they are. So for this particular buzzer, for the Vifly buzzer, it doesn't hook up like a normal passive buzzer. You need to hook it up to ground to 5 volts so that it can charge its internal battery, and then you hook it up to the buzzer signal, which is the buzzer negative on this particular Matek board. It's really, really cool little piece of kit, and it's got a little disarm button on the side, So when you unplug your battery, this thing will start beeping, of course, because that's what it's designed to do. So when you unplug your battery, all you have to do is press this little button here. Pretty cool. Tiny thing, weighs 4 grams. So very, very nice. Right, yeah. So I'm gonna put this buzzer, I need to put this buzzer in a way where I can access that button pretty easily. So I've been trying to figure out, and I think the best way to achieve that is to actually put it just behind the camera, maybe with a zip tie, so that let me see, maybe like that, so that I can press that button with my finger to deactivate it. Yeah, that's not going to work because it's just going to rotate around. Tricky. Yeah, you need to access that button. If you can't get to that button, you're pretty much screwed. Oh, I see. I can probably set it vertically just there. So I'm gonna just temporarily try to put it on there with this zip tie. It's pretty cool because it has a plug, so I'm going to put it facing down. I don't want it to intrude on the flight controller. I think this is going to be a lost cause. Trying to get to that button, sorry. Should have thought about this before. Oh well. Trusty old double-sided tape. Maybe that will just help. This VHB tape is really good. It's very high bond, pressure sensitive tape. So the harder you press down on it, the harder it sticks. And in addition to that, over time, it gets the bond gets even stronger. Oh, I don't like the bond on that plug though. I'm pretty sure it'll be fine. So I'm just going to stick this here. See if that fits with the camera place. Perfect. And let me grab a zip tie. Zip tie. And I'll just zip tie this around this frame here, hopefully in a way that will avoid that standoff. Come on, there you go. The zip tie is important because I don't want this thing to move, and I want to get to that button properly. And also, a lot of people misunderstand what it means to build a frame and build a reliable quadcopter. You can't have anything sort of moving around inside your frame. If you've got anything that's vibrating or messing around in the frame, you can induce vibrations into your gyro and you'll have a badly flying quad. Does that make sense? Yeah, I can get to that button now with my little pinky. It seems to be pretty solid. Just get rid of this zip tie end here. What I like to do with the zip ties as well is I grab a lighter and I melt the tip, because anybody who knows zip ties knows that those sharp edges on those tips like to cut fingers. So as a safety measure, all of my zip tie ends are heated up and rounded off, so no risk of scratching or cutting myself. Right, so there's the buzzer in place. It's pretty good. The cable is not forcing anything onto the flight controller. And now all I have to do is get to the buzzer, which is on the back here, and I have enough to actually go underneath the board just to keep it a little bit cleaner. So let's try and do that. Okay. I think, yeah, should be able to feed this under the board. I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. So you can sort of see what I'm doing. Get some little focus here. Yeah. Come on. Where are my other tweezers? I need to get some tweezers with some grip on them. Should have really done this before zip tying it to the frame. Precision work. Okay, so that is in there very nicely. Now let me just grab something else quickly. So I don't have any hot glue, so instead of hot glue I use this stuff. This is it's a thermoplastic. That one's gone. It's a thermoplastic. It's a modeling plastic, and just need to heat it up. And it's a very strong hot glue type bond. That will keep that plug from coming out. Very nice. So now I've got these 3 cables. So we've got red, black, and yellow. So I have a ground pad, 5-volt pad, and a buzzer pad. That is great. That's all I need. Let's get this guy warmed up again. A little trusty TX100. TS100. So these are pre-tinned. It's not bad. I'm not going to bother tinning them again. I might just snip off the tip though. It's a bit too long. Yeah, use nail clippers for this. It's just much simpler. Yeah. Grab my solder. This one is 6039-1 solder. So 61 tin, 60 tin, 39 lead, 1 copper. The copper helps the adherence, helps it adhere, so stick to your pads a little bit easier. It's very similar to 60-40. I'm just going to retin the buzzer pads because they've been used before. Oops. Sorry guys, I have to reclip my microphone. That wasn't supposed to happen. Sorry. There you go. So with these through holes, I tin them first, and then I can quickly line everything up and push the cable through. Hopefully that will work. Come on. Very nice. That should be it. That is all soldered up. Now let's test it. So I've got my camera unplugged, that's okay. I'm just going to double check that I haven't caused any issues with the other cables. I've got my VTX antenna plugged in, which is very important. It's important to keep your VTX antenna plugged in when you power your quad on. So let me grab another LiPo. Just finished charging. And hopefully we have a successful buzzer. So double check ground, 5-volt buzzer, negative. So wow. Okay, so it's working. My battery's low. I think you got to keep it pressed for 3 seconds. There you go. It's deactivated. So how to deactivate? How to alarm manually. After the flight main battery is disconnected, we'll enter pre-alarm mode and beep in low volume for 30 seconds, and then it'll beep in maximum volume. If you want to end flying, please disarm Vifly by the following message. Vfly with the disarm button. Disconnect the battery and hold the disarm button for 1 to 5 seconds and release. Or disarm with the main battery. You can disconnect from battery, then connect for 3 to 6 seconds and disconnect it again. Disconnect it again. I don't like doing that. On quads where you don't have a input cap on the power leads, you risk a big inrush of current when you like just plug it in really quickly. I don't like that. When main battery is connected, Vifly Finder will be charged automatically and stop charging when fully charged. That's great. So overall, this is a pretty good product. Now, I need to see why it was constantly buzzing. I think it is stuck. Something stuck sideways. There you go. Great stuff. Wow. Isn't that marvelous? So I'm not going to put this all back together again, but I am going to spare you that that massacre. But I did say I wanted to show you how the Supafly V2 is holding up. So I'll go ahead and show you that. So this is my trusty old Supafly V2. It was built maybe 8 or 9 months ago, I think. I fly a lot during the winter. I fly all the time. Pretty much I'm insensitive to cold weather, so pretty resistant to cold weather, and you can see that she has been flown properly around the ways. So this is what, when we come down the cliff, it's almost a vertical face. When we come down there, one of the things I like to do is scrape along the rock face. It's a really smooth rock face and it's almost vertical. So dive down and try to slide down the rock face, and inevitably, yeah, you're gonna hit your frame and hit your carbon. This has got the Bando Basher kit on it. So that saves the arms edges. I got stuck up there on the face of the cliff. In the whole cliff there's one tiny little bush. I got stuck on that bush and tried to turtle my way out. And you can see what that does to your props. Yeah, so all in all, these cables, that's my camera control board. That's a bit loose in there. This is what you sort of try to avoid. This is not causing me any issues, but I will stick that back down later on today. Maybe I'll live stream it, I'm not sure. I've got a bunch of work to do. I got to replace this cable, which is starting to get dangerous. I got to replace this gummy. I got to put this antenna back on. The receiver antennas come off. Got to put some new feet on there. And generally just, you know, give it a little bit of a once over. I've got to replace the tape on my VTX, which has come undone. So the VTX and the receiver are under there. You see, that's bad example, setting a bad example. I'm supposed to lead by example. I need to reattach these because they're just floating around in there. My actual heat sink, I don't know if you can see it in there. The shielding on my VTX has actually come off, and it's pretty rusty because this quad also spent 3.5 weeks up a tree during the December storm. I was doing some medical treatments, and I couldn't get to it. Yeah, so I'll also show you the chameleon. Hopefully I can get to it quickly. This one spent 2 weeks up there as well. Sorry, spent 4 weeks up on the top of the cliff. And you can see all the rust, all the hardware is rusted. All the steel hardware has got a nice coating of rust. There's actually not a lot of corrosion on the actual electronics themselves, which is great considering it did spend a lot of time with the battery plugged in, but it was dry when the battery was still alive, so overnight the battery died. If it was humid, it would have corroded a bit more, because that's just the way it is. Electricity likes humidity. So there's a little bit of corrosion on the PDB on this one, but nothing major. Everything else except the RX, the receiver's also got a little bit of corrosion on there, on the back, but everything else is encased in heat shrink, so it didn't corrode. You see the bottom, see my hardware there, some rusties. The motors are fine, they didn't affect anything. I think it was at an angle where the water couldn't really get to it that much. This motor is a bit grainy, but that might just be dirt, because it is very dirty in there. Yeah, that one's also a bit grainy. It works. I plugged it in, tested it out, and it is fully functional. So all I'll do is clean this rust off at some point. And I got some new protectors to change on here. But yeah, that's the nice life of a quad. Quad stuck up a cliff for a month. Isn't that great? So yeah, right. That's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. The Supafly Juicemode will be available soon, if not already, if you're watching this in the future. I highly recommend this build. It is a super brilliant frame, and it will stand up to a lot of abuse, just like all of their previous frames. So go out there, get yourself one of these, and enjoy building and flying it, because it will not let you down. Okay, with that said, all that is left to say is the customary algorithms. So please subscribe. I do need the subscribers. 96% of the people who watch my channel are not subscribers, which is a shame. I need to start monetizing this. Also, I'm going to start asking for donations. You don't like donations, so this doesn't cost you anything. Let YouTube pay for my stuff. And I hope to see you next time. So thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you didn't. I welcome any comment down below, positive or negative, and I'll see you on the flip side, okay?